Now you got the balls to tell me that after everything I've been through, after everything I've done for this family, your family, there's nothing left for me! Hey!
Dwight, the General Manfredi, was once a New York Mafia capo, but now he is serving a 25-year sentence in place of the boss of his gang. To ensure he doesn't fall behind, he reads literary works, plays, and news every day, just waiting for the day he can get out and continue fighting alongside his crew. On the day Dwight is released, there aren't as many people to greet him as he had expected. His former associates send a driver to pick him up. The driver then takes him to a luxurious mansion. When the door opens, he is greeted by the same familiar faces as before: Pete, Chicky, Vince, Goody, and Nico. Pete informs him that things have changed, and Chicky, Pete's son, is now the underboss. Vince is a capo. Dwight is surprised to learn that he will be sent to Tulsa, Oklahoma, to expand the territory. Not only does he receive no financial support or assistance, but he also has to send profits back to the headquarters every month. Dwight feels that this is not enough compensation after sacrificing 25 years of his life, getting divorced, and losing contact with his daughter. He protests, and as the argument escalates, he punches Vince and knocks him out. Seeing his former associates attack him while a once close friend didn't even speak up in his defense, Dwight realizes that times have changed, gives up hoping for anything from Pete, and reluctantly agrees to head to Tulsa. When he gave up his family and career to serve a 25-year prison sentence, only to receive betrayal from his associates, Dwight can only blame himself for being blind from the start. A few days later, Dwight arrives in Tulsa and is picked up by a local taxi driver. Little did he know he would encounter a real mafia guy. Dwight appreciates meeting someone who understands things like this. After a while of talking, Dwight learns that the driver's name is Tyson, essentially a walking map of Tulsa. Since Dwight is unfamiliar with the area, he asks Tyson to take him to a marijuana dispensary and then gives him a stack of money to wait for him. Dwight gets out of the car with a cool demeanor, and Tyson can't possibly guess what he's about to do inside. As soon as Dwight enters, he signals his desire to speak with the owner, but the shopkeeper, not liking Dwight, calls for security and has him escorted out with pepper spray. Dwight reluctantly exits through the door. But the real fun is just beginning. Do you have a bat? Yes, I have one in the back of the car. Never mind, I don't need it. Hey, what are you doing? If he hadn't caused a scene, they probably wouldn't have paid him any attention. This way, Dwight meets Bodie, the dispensary owner. After reviewing the store's accounts, Dwight sees that the business is doing quite well, so he politely tells Bodie that he wants to receive 20% of the weekly profits in exchange for taking responsibility for the dispensary's safety. Clearly, Bodie is very confused. He says the store is operating legally and there are no gangs around. You make money and I make sure you'll keep it. Dwight's point is that he doesn't care whether you need protection or not, he's going to get his money either way. Under Dwight's pressure, the store becomes his first client. After leaving, he gives Tyson tens of thousands of dollars to buy a navigator. He also gives Tyson an additional $2,000 as weekly wages to be his personal driver. With that, Dwight is all set up for his role as a mob boss. The next day, however, Tyson brings bad news. He says that the car dealership owner discriminates against black people and not only refused to sell the car but also called the police to have him arrested. Despite being newly hired, Dwight is very protective of his people. Tyson takes Dwight to the car dealership and heads straight to the owner's office. Upon seeing Dwight's attire, the owner immediately stands up, smiles, and greets him, even apologizing for insulting Tyson. Dwight is an old gangster who has dealt with many people like this before. Normally, he would handle such situations directly without much talk. I'm calling the police. Oh, let me get my phone for you. In the end, both of them managed to get the Lincoln Navigator for just $50,000. To pursue his dream of building his own empire sooner, Dwight returns to the dispensary. The old man is back, and Bodie is truly at a loss. What's with that look on your face? Is this how you greet customers? Are you a customer? No one can laugh at someone who has taken hundreds of thousands of dollars from them. Dwight doesn't care much about it. To show his sincerity in this partnership, he even has Tyson bring along the latest security camera equipment. Then, Bodie reports today's orders to Dwight. In just over 2 hours, they made more than $5,000. It seems that this dispensary is truly very profitable. But today, Dwight isn't here to collect protection money. Instead, he asks Bodie about the channels for buying marijuana. After getting the information he wants, Dwight kindly reminds Bodie that if the FBI targets his special product line, he'll go bankrupt immediately. So, make sure to launder the money thoroughly. He tells Bodie to contact him if he needs anything. That evening, he takes the money he earned from the dispensary to a bar. A beautiful woman in a red dress approaches him. She says it's the first time she's seen such a cool older guy and wants to take a photo with him to post on social media. Dwight immediately declines when he hears about the photo. A while later, another beautiful woman in a blue dress approached, accusing him of being rude to her friend. Her name was Stacy. She then invited him to join her and her girlfriends for a bachelorette party. After a bit of partying, Stacy suggested that she and Dwight hook up back at the hotel.
A few moments later.
During their conversation, Dwight mentions that he is divorced. Stacy also says she is in the middle of a divorce and that Dwight could be a deciding factor. But first, she needs to confirm one thing. How old is he? Dwight says that when Kennedy was assassinated, he was in his senior year of high school. Stacy is stunned, realizing that the man sitting in front of her is 75 years old. Oh my God, are you kidding me? I would have guessed you're just over 55. After saying that, she puts her dress back on and walks out. Dwight is left speechless. It seems no one can escape the ravages of time. The following day, the FBI notifies the local ATF branch of Dwight's arrival in Tulsa, where Stacy, who is revealed to be an ATF agent, learns the identity of the man she spent the night with. In a moment of recklessness, she had gotten involved with the very man she was meant to be monitoring. What kind of sparks would fly between them next? Dwight had been in prison for 25 years, and the first major problem he encountered was how to spend money. He wanted to send a package to his daughter, but the receptionist told him that this place only accepted cards, not cash. Dwight was bewildered, saying, "Cash is king, haven't you ever heard that before?" Dwight had plenty of money but couldn't spend it, which made him feel quite frustrated. He had to randomly approach a customer. "I'll give you cash, and you swipe your card for me." "All right." Smart thinking, my friend. In order to keep up with the times, Dwight had to go to the bank to apply for a debit card. The manager was stunned when they saw his information. Dwight's ID had expired back in 1998. So, he had to file an application for a new ID. But when he went to get his photo taken, "Face front, please." "Sir, what are you doing?" After completing all the procedures, the clerk told him to come back in a month to pick up his ID. Dwight quietly pulled out a $100 bill, and the dark-haired woman casually accepted it, tucking the money into her shirt as if nothing had happened. How strange, suddenly there seemed to be an extra slot available next week. She even handed him a temporary ID number. With that, Dwight successfully registered for the first bank card of his life. He went through all this trouble just to find contact information for Tina, his estranged daughter. This was a paid unlocking website, and when he called the number he got an answer from a man. It turned out Dwight's daughter was already married. He told his son-in-law that he wanted to hear his daughter's voice, but he was surprised when she callously hung up on him. Dwight knows he owes his daughter a lot. Because of his involvement with the gang, he was absent throughout her childhood. Now, having been abandoned by the organization and pushed to the distant Tulsa, most people might have despaired long ago, but Dwight is different. As he looks at the towering buildings before him, he is determined to conquer the city at his feet. One day, the king will return to the organization. After settling his emotions, he went to the dispensary. Bodie could not bear Dwight's incessant demands for money. He asked if, as part of the partnership, he could receive any benefits from Dwight. At this point, Dwight decided it was time to broaden his perspective. Bodie took Dwight to a cannabis supply facility owned by Jimmy. Soon after, a man emerged. He was Badface, the cousin of the farm owner. Dwight approached and extended his hand for a handshake, but the man didn't react, seemingly ignoring the group in front of him. When he finally spoke, he let loose a barrage of profanity at them. Just as both sides were about to break into a brawl, Jimmy appeared right on time. Clearly, he knew his cousin's temperament well, or else his customer base wouldn't be so large. Many had come to negotiate before, but Dwight's negotiation style was unique, leaving Jimmy stunned and even shocking his own team. Let's see how Dwight handled the business negotiation with Jimmy. "I'll take 300 units. 1,200 for the first 10 units, 1,100 for the next 10, 1,000 for the 10 after that, and 750 each for the remaining 270 units. I'll have to do the math. You have to be quick. If I finish this pie, the offer will no longer be valid." Dwight didn't give him any time to react. As a result, he took over the cannabis supply chain at the lowest internal rates, laying a solid foundation for his conquest of Tulsa. Dwight's business in Tulsa was booming, but back at headquarters in New York, someone was on the verge of quitting. That someone was Vince. When Dwight first got out of prison, he broke Vince's jaw, and even now, Vince still couldn't speak properly. Every conversation left him furious. He went to Chicky, demanding justice. "Do you want to kill him?" "Yes. He's a friend of my father, you know that, right? And besides, he's also a capo." To calm his anger, Vince decided to talk to Dwight. After a brief exchange, they got straight to the point. Vince gave Dwight two options: either pay $100,000 to avoid trouble, or remain silent and wait for revenge. "All right, I'll send him something. But if you hear it ticking, don't open it." With that, he hung up the phone. These punks really liked stirring up trouble, but he didn't have time to worry about such trivial matters. The dispensary had a supply chain selling in bulk at low prices, making it Dwight's personal cash machine. It was also a dream paradise for the younger crowd. As Dwight continues to settle into his new life, Tyson helps him prepare for his upcoming driving test. During a lesson, Dwight brings up Tyson's future, explaining that he isn't suited for a life of crime. Later, Dwight takes his driving test with Paul, a DMV instructor. While waiting at a red light, a man wearing a mask drove up and opened fire on Dwight through the window. Dwight and Paul ducked, narrowly avoiding the bullets. But Dwight couldn't just let him go that easily. He slammed the gas pedal and sped off, with the two cars engaged in a dramatic chase through the streets. Paul, terrified, screamed in the car. To quiet him down, Dwight shouted, "Shut the f*** up." The simple yet effective tactic worked, and Dwight continued his pursuit. At a dead end, the hitman decided to take a dangerous move. Just as they were about to collide, he quickly swerved into another lane. This time, Dwight had no way to follow, so he had no choice but to watch his opponent escape. To remember the license plate, he borrowed some blood from the examiner's head and wrote it on the windshield. While others might damage the car during their driving test, Dwight ended up damaging the examiner. Soon after, the police arrived at the scene. Dwight went to the police station to give his statement. He explained that everything happened so quickly and ended before he could react, nearly costing the examiner his life. However, the police immediately uncovered his true identity. As a mob capo from New York, this situation was certainly not as simple as he claimed. Dwight said he came to Tulsa just to turn his life around, a statement that nearly made him laugh himself. But the police had no choice. For now, he appeared to be the victim. At the same time, to destroy the evidence, the hitman poured gasoline over the car and set it on fire. However, he made a mistake by closing the car door, which led to an unexpected disaster for him. While Dwight was still at the police station, he was surprised to see Stacy. She revealed her identity as an agent and secured his release. The female officer in charge looked confused, wondering how a crime boss and an agent could possibly know each other. Later, the two had dinner together as lovers, and by the next morning, the details of what transpired were quite clear. After a brief interlude, Dwight certainly wasn't going to forget that someone wanted to harm him. Even if that person buried himself underground, Dwight would dig him out. He called Chicky in New York, because ever since he got out of prison, he hadn't crossed anyone. Dwight thought Vince wanted revenge on him, but Goody quickly clarified the situation, saying that their issue was already resolved. But if it wasn't Vince, then who could it be? Dwight remembered the license plate number he had memorized and then went to visit Paul, his driving examiner, in the hospital. Did you think he would show sympathy? That would be a mistake. He handed Paul $10,000 in cash and asked him to run the shooter's license plate through his colleagues at the DMV. If not, Paul should be ready to say goodbye to his family. This tactic certainly worked well with the salaried folk. After leaving the hospital, Dwight heads to a diner with Tyson and tries to fire him to protect him. However, Tyson protests, explaining that he's fully aware of the dangers that come with the job. After some consideration, Dwight agrees to keep Tyson as his driver. Dwight and Tyson then received information about the shooter's car and went to investigate. They found a clue in the partially burned car that led them to Fornario Ranch. However, Margaret, the ranch owner, refused to cooperate. Suspecting that the shooter was an employee of the ranch, Dwight patiently waited outside until nightfall and followed him home. He was ready to take action, but when he saw the children, Dwight hesitated. The next morning, unaware that Dwight had followed him home, the shooter bid farewell to his family and went inside. As he turned his back, Dwight stealthily approached from behind and forced him inside at gunpoint. Once inside, Dwight interrogated him, only to discover that it was all just a misunderstanding. It turned out that the two had known each other from 25 years ago. Armand, the shooter, told Dwight that Pete had wanted to eliminate him while he was in prison because Pete didn't trust anyone who could willingly sit in prison for 25 years. During that time, Armand wanted to inform Dwight in prison but never found the right opportunity. Eventually, he was discovered and had to flee to Tulsa. When Armand first saw Dwight arrive in Tulsa, he thought the organization had sent someone to kill him, which is why he opened fire in self-defense. The weight of this information was overwhelming. Dwight had been completely loyal to the gang, but in return, he was met with distrust and betrayal. After accepting Armand's explanation, Dwight told him that from now on, he would be working for him, then left. With that, Dwight's team in Tulsa grew even stronger. Although Dwight now had a stable income from the pharmacy, it still couldn't satisfy his ambitions. To expand his territory, he decided to reach out to the nearby amusement park. Bodie informed him that the park was protected by a powerful gang called the Black Macadam, but Dwight was not concerned with such matters. He instructed they collect nitrous tanks to sell in balloons at a local music festival. At the event, Tyson and Bodie are confronted by two Black Macadam members who explain they aren't allowed to sell on their turf. After turning the gang members away, Tyson and Bodie go back to Dwight with their earnings. The following night, Tyson and Bodie return to the festival to sell more balloons. However, this time, they are confronted, assaulted, and robbed by Black Macadam members. They return to the Bread $2 saloon, where they inform Dwight of the incident. To retaliate, Dwight gathers a crew, including Tyson's father, Mark, to confront the gang. A real gang brawl was about to break out. "You hit my people, so I'll hit back," just that the numbers didn't quite match up. Dwight was fighting fiercely when suddenly, he was struck with a bat by an opponent. Armand arrived just in time to rescue Dwight, mercilessly bashing the guy's head. Once everyone joined forces, the fight ended in just a few minutes. Not only did they reclaim the money, but they also successfully recovered the stolen nitrous oxide tanks. They returned to Bread to Buck to celebrate. Mark informs Tyson that despite the choices he's made, he can always come home. Meanwhile, Armand had just joined the organization but was already showing great bravery. Dwight handed him a small stack of cash as a reward for his efforts, encouraging him. Feeling praised by the boss, Armand thought he had reached the pinnacle of his life. But as soon as he got home, this time, he decided he wouldn't hold back anymore. He marched straight over to the neighbor with the barking dog and then, as everything seemed to be moving in a positive direction, Dwight received a call from his sister, Joanne. She informed him that their brother, Joseph, was bedridden, giving Dwight the chance to have one last conversation with him. After Joseph passed away, Dwight returned to Brooklyn for the funeral, where the atmosphere was tense despite his efforts to ease the situation with gestures like buying flowers and arranging an extravagant lunch. Dwight's daughter, Tina, was not pleased to see him. He hesitated to approach her, as he had failed in his responsibilities as a father. However, Dwight didn't expect that while he was in New York for the funeral, a major incident would occur back in Tulsa. The kids they had beaten up earlier were members of the infamous Black Macadams gang in the area. Saulan Waltrip, the leader of Black Macadams, was furious with Dwight's actions at the music festival. Seeking revenge, he ordered corrupt cops under his control to arrest Dwight's driver, Tyson, for no apparent reason. Tyson was thrown in jail and had to spend the night there. The next day, Tyson was released, but the police had stolen his phone. After checking the contacts, they discovered that Tyson frequently communicated with Bodie, the owner of the dispensary. The Black Macadams gang immediately captured Bodie, pressuring him for information about Dwight and his activities. Threatened, Bodie had no choice but to confess. He revealed that Dwight was a big shot from New York, and their business relationship could be described as one of intimidation and extortion. Upon hearing this, Waltrip laughed, realizing that his opponent wasn't as formidable as he initially thought. At the same time, the gang learned that Dwight had returned to New York. Chicky was furious, accusing him of not informing him about his return. "Do you not respect me at all?" Dwight explained that his younger brother had passed away, and he had only come back for the funeral with no other intentions. Chicky told him to come to the hospital immediately because his father's condition was critical. After saying that, Chicky abruptly hung up the phone. Faced with this junior's unreasonable behavior, Dwight was not the type to indulge such childishness. It wasn't until the next day, after attending his younger brother's funeral, that he went to the hospital. However, Chicky showed no respect for his uncle. "I want to talk to your father. He's asleep. Next time I call, you better come right away." After leaving, Dwight stopped by Tina's flower shop. During an intense discussion, Tina explained how much Dwight had let her down, laying out years of grievances. She also implied that Nico, the package, had sexually assaulted her while Dwight was in prison. Enraged, Dwight leaves to confront those responsible. He first confronted Pete in the hospital, who swore he knew nothing about the incident. Dwight then headed to the mob clubhouse in search of Nico. Upon arrival, Dwight burst through the door and violently attacked and killed Nico, shocking the other members in the room, including Vince and Chicky. In the family meeting, Chicky believed that Dwight and his daughter had to be eliminated. Pete quickly spoke up, "Are you out of your mind?" His anger made the high-ranking members silent. Pete's message was clear: Dwight had made significant contributions to the gang, and no one was to touch him. Chicky said, "How much longer are we going to let him walk all over us?" Pete replied, "You should worry about yourself first." Although Pete did not pursue Dwight, the look in Chicky's eyes made it clear that this matter would not end there. At the same time, Dwight visited Tina's shop to say goodbye before returning to Tulsa. He informed Tina that he had killed Nico and expressed his feelings for her, despite his past mistakes. However, Tina was devastated. She said that she had struggled to move past the past. "Don't you see, Dad? Wherever you go, trouble follows. You've ruined my life." Tina mentioned that the mob would surely not spare her, but Dwight reassured her, saying that he understood Pete and that he would not harm his own family. After speaking, Dwight turned and left. However, he had overlooked one person, Chicky, the ever-rebellious one. Returning to Tulsa, Tyson immediately went to the airport to pick him up. After hearing about the troubles Tyson had faced during this time, Dwight had a foreboding feeling. They went straight to the pharmacy, only to find that it was closed and they couldn't get in touch with Bodie. A few days later, Bodie appeared at Bread to Buck. He informed Dwight and the crew that he had been interrogated and raided by the FBI. Despite his fears that his money and supply had been seized, he assured everyone that he hadn't confessed to any incriminating information. Dwight then surprised Bodie by revealing that they had taken his money and marijuana supply before the raid. The crew celebrated their wins with drinks. However, right after Dwight left New York, Tina received a strange call where the caller didn't say a word. She immediately informed her father. Dwight wanted to send someone to protect her, but Tina said that having her husband with her was enough. Given that, he could only tell his daughter not to worry and to leave the matter to him. Just as Dwight was preparing to take action, Agent Stacy, who had slept with him twice, showed up. She informed him that the FBI had started investigating him and were aware of what he had been doing in New York. Stacy warned him that he needed to stop immediately, or he would face serious consequences. However, Dwight showed no concern. The next day, Dwight met with members of the Black McAdams gang. They told him that his actions didn't quite adhere to their rules. At the very least, he should have given them a heads up or shared some of the profits to avoid such unpleasant situations. Dwight laughed upon hearing this and said, "Whether it's you or anyone else, you can't stop me. You're overestimating yourself. By the time I make my move, it'll be too late for you to react. Next time we meet, find a place with air conditioning to have the conversation." This infuriated Waltrip. That night, an unexpected event occurred. Dwight was ambushed. Who had the audacity to do this? He wanted to see who the intruder was, but the assailants didn't give him a chance. They continued firing, shattering all the windows of Bread to Buck. However, Dwight wasn't one to passively endure. He and another person fled through the kitchen. The attackers turned out to be members of the Black McAdams gang. It was baffling that one person had the courage to challenge them. Afterward, the two of them went to a forest to bury the bodies. Although there were no casualties, the actions of the attackers had declared war on Dwight. The situation took a turn when Waltrip from the Black McAdams gang received a package containing the shirt of the buried gang member. Seeing the bullet holes on it, Waltrip realized that his henchman had been killed. Roxy, the girlfriend of the unfortunate victim and also an ATF undercover agent, was so devastated that she called Stacy to report the incident. Stacy took advantage of this emotional moment to incite Roxy to seek revenge and instructed her to steal financial information about Waltrip from his computer. By the end of the day, Roxy broke into Waltrip's office but was caught in the act. Waltrip ended up strangling Roxy with a rope, and then. Meanwhile, Stacy received no news from Roxy. She called, only to find Waltrip's voice on the other end of the line. It seemed highly likely that Roxy was in a bad situation. Nevertheless, she wanted to confirm who she was speaking to. You have reached the phone number of hell. Dwight faced significant trouble as his previous actions in New York had made things too conspicuous, resulting in his son-in-law being brutally attacked. Tina called Dwight to inform him that the attackers did not rob her husband but simply assaulted him and then fled. Dwight advised his daughter to move to Tulsa immediately, as his experience allowed him to sense imminent danger. However, his daughter insisted that she would not relocate. Faced with this, Dwight decided to take a more direct approach. After hanging up, Dwight suspected that this incident was definitely related to Chicky. He immediately called Goody, the consigliera of the Inverti family, and said, "No matter what foolish plan you guys are preparing, you'd better stop it right now. If not, you won't be able to handle the consequences." He then instructed Goody to come to Tulsa because there were some matters he wanted to discuss in person. After Goody arrived, he met with Dwight and his crew. Dwight loudly vented his anger at Goody. He said that it might not have been him who did it. With Pete's enforcement, no one dared to touch Dwight's family. However, Dwight had underestimated Chicky's rebellion. To seize power quickly, Chicky had thrown Goody into a water tank. Chicky adjusted his crooked wig and thought, now let's see who dares to challenge him. Once Chicky gained power, the first person he wanted to deal with would definitely be Dwight, whom he saw as a thorn in his side. At this point, Dwight was unaware that Pete had died. He sought out Bodie to discuss a new project. Once achieved, this would ensure he'd never have to worry about money again. Dwight was interested in opening a casino behind Bread to Buck, and the first person he approached for collaboration was Bodie. Based on his experience with Dwight, Bodie understood that Dwight had high demands, aimed to achieve great things, and valued loyalty. He put all his assets on the line. "I'll be straightforward, I'm a billionaire." Dwight was taken aback by the figures, which showed a savings account in the millions. "Did you really think you were the only criminal in Tulsa?" At this point, Dwight's path to becoming a kingpin was one step closer. However, that night, Goody, who had initially planned to leave, returned to the bar. He told Dwight that Pete had died. Dwight was stunned. Although Pete had been ruthless towards him, they had been lifelong brothers in arms. Dwight knew he had to act quickly because Chicky would definitely not spare him. To deal with the threat from the Black McAdams gang and the New York mob, Dwight began training everyone in shooting. The bar owner served as a temporary trainer. However, the trainees seemed rather incompetent. Bodie complained about feeling uncomfortable handling the weapon, but Dwight told him to try and adapt, as it was better than losing his life. Meanwhile, Tyson was even more peculiar. Despite Dwight's instructions, he insisted that his stance looked cool and almost like a form of worship. Meanwhile, the headquarters in New York was holding Pete's funeral. Chicky claimed that everything was Dwight's fault, leading to his father's heart condition worsening, and he vowed to kill Dwight to avenge his father. Facing such a reluctant reason, some leaders expressed their opposition. They argued that Dwight had conquered half of the gang's territory, and now was not the time to throw him under the bus. Chicky hated hearing that Dwight was stronger than him. He silenced his critics and forced them to face reality, making it clear who was now in charge. After reaching a consensus among the gang leaders, Dwight received a call from Chicky that night. Chicky expressed deep regret over his father's death. He apologized for his past actions, stating that Dwight was the only family he had left. He claimed he wanted to strengthen the gang and emphasized the need for unity. Chicky planned to visit Dwight. Hearing such sincerity from his nephew, Dwight had no doubts and gave Chicky his address. However, as soon as he hung up, Chicky's expression darkened. This old man is still hanging on. Meanwhile, Waltrip from the Black McAdams gang ordered his corrupt police officers to arrest Dwight and ensure he would be killed in jail. By the afternoon, they had located Dwight's whereabouts. "Leave this to me." Tyson pointed out that the police officer was the same one who had previously arrested him. Dwight, experienced in dealing with such low-level thugs, confronted them. "Do you want to see your wife and children again?" The two men, realizing that Dwight was even more ruthless than the Black McAdams gang, immediately feared for their lives and considered retreating. However, they dared not cross Waltrip. Trapped in the middle, they could only lie and say they couldn't find Dwight. Enraged, Waltrip decided to take matters into his own hands. That night, Stacy visited Dwight. She informed him that she had issued a wanted notice against the Black McAdams gang. To show his gratitude, Dwight invited her upstairs to talk. At that moment, Waltrip and another gang member appeared on a motorcycle and opened fire on them. Dwight and Stacy returned fire but missed Waltrip and ended up killing his accomplice. However, Stacy was also hit in the gunfight and was rushed to the hospital. As police sirens grew louder, Waltrip hurriedly fled the scene. This time, he had touched a nerve with Dwight. "I have to kill that bastard." In a flashback to 1997 in New York, Vince and Chicky were violently interrogating a man handcuffed to a radiator. Armand was also present, protesting when Chicky branded their captive with a hot iron. Armand called Dwight, who arrived shortly after and intervened. During a confrontation with Chicky and Vince, the brand dropped to the floor and started a fire. Chicky, Vince, and Armand fled as Dwight attempted to free the man from the radiator. Unable to break the cuffs, Dwight killed the man out of mercy and ran outside, where he was arrested by the police waiting outside, resulting in his 25-year prison sentence. In the present day, Dwight visited Stacy in the hospital. He vowed revenge on Waltrip and to make it up to Stacy, who would likely lose her job due to their relationship. Meanwhile, Waltrip rallied his gang members, declared war on Dwight, and prepared to attack. As tensions rose, Chicky, Vince, and Goody arrived in Tulsa to meet with Dwight. Doubting their motives, Dwight, Armand, and Tyson surprised them first and told them to leave. During the ensuing argument, Dwight extended an invitation to Goody to stay and join his crew, which Goody accepted. Chicky and Vince then departed, feeling angered and betrayed after Dwight declared that he no longer worked for them. At the end of the day, Dwight gathered his crew at the Bread to Buck and introduced their new member, Goody Karangi Dennis. He also explained that they were at war with the Black McAdams. He then enlisted Bodie's help to steal Waltrip's amassed fortune and instructed Tyson to deliver a package containing $1 million of the stolen funds to Stacy for her loss of career. Expecting an attack, Dwight and his crew booby-trapped the Bread to Buck. That night, Waltrip and his heavily armed gang stormed the saloon, leading to a shootout with casualties on both sides. Waltrip and Dwight finally clashed, exchanging blows until Dwight killed Waltrip. 3 months later, Tina visited Dwight, and he was able to meet his grandchildren. At this moment Tina also started calling Dwight Dad after decades of not hearing that title. That same night, Dwight and all his members were holding a victory party at Bread to Buck. This party also served as the opening of cabaret and casino which had been renovated by Dwight after he invested in it. After that Dwight appeared very happy because now he had become the sole ruler or mafia king in the city of Tulsa. Not long after he received news that there was a woman waiting for him outside, Dwight went out and discovered that it was Stacy. However, instead of a nice chat, Dwight was arrested and charged with bribing a federal agent, revealing that Stacy had sacrificed him to get her career back. Seeing her father getting arrested, Tina protested as he was taken away from her life again, so soon after they had patched things up. After Dwight was arrested by the police without resistance and put into a car, he managed to tell Tina that this was not the end of everything but just the beginning. But what's coming will come. Stay tuned for season 2 of this TV series, which will be released in mid-September. Catch you in the next video.